There is something more dangerous than being hunted, being lied to, because enemies don't always come from the outside. Sometimes, they stand right beside you. And the moment Kamari heard those words, "Ask him what your father really was," everything changed. Not the room, not the people, but her. Because now, this wasn't just about survival. This wasn't just about protection. This was about truth. And in a world built on secrets, the truth is the most dangerous weapon of all. Because once you start questioning everything, you can't go back. And the moment doubt enters your mind, you don't just lose trust. You lose control. Her name is Kamari, and tonight, she's about to find out that the man she chose to stand beside might be hiding more than her enemies ever could. Welcome back to the Mafia's obsession, where power, betrayal, and obsession collide. If you thought things were intense before, you're not ready for what comes next. Because this time, it's not about running, it's about choosing who to trust. The door opened again. She didn't need to turn. She already knew. Kim Do-han. He stepped in quietly, watched her, watched the file. "You've seen enough to understand the direction," he said. Kamari turned slowly, her eyes sharper now, focused. "This isn't about me," she said. A pause. "It's about him." Kim didn't deny it. Yes. Simple. Kamari stepped closer, her grip still tight on the file. "Then why am I involved?" she asked. This time, there was weight in her voice, because she was no longer guessing. She was connecting. Kim held her gaze. "Because of what he left behind." Silence. Kamari's chest tightened. "He left nothing," she said, her voice lower now. "Careful. He left me." Kim stepped closer. Just slightly. "And that's exactly the point." The words landed heavy. Because now, it clicked. Not fully, but enough. Kamari's eyes widened slightly. "You're saying—" A pause. "They're not after me." Kim didn't interrupt. Kamari finished. "They're after what he knew." Silence. Because that was the truth. Kim nodded once. Yes. Everything in the room shifted. Because now, this wasn't about a random woman caught in a situation. This was about legacy. Information. Something unfinished. Kamari looked down at the file again, her fingers brushing over the image, her father's face. Then, she looked back at Kim. "Then you already knew," she said. Not a question. A realization. Kim didn't answer immediately. Then, "I suspected." "Not fully, but enough." Kamari let out a slow breath. "So, when you stepped in that night—" A pause. "It wasn't just because of what happened." Kim held her gaze. "No. The truth. Unfiltered." Kamari nodded slowly. Because now, everything made sense. The attention, the protection, the control. It wasn't random. It was calculated, but not in a bad way. In a necessary way. Because whatever her father had been involved in had come back. And it had found her. Kim stepped back slightly. Giving her space. Because now, this wasn't about him explaining. This was about her understanding. This is where it changes, he said. Kamari looked up. How? Kim's expression remained calm. But his eyes, sharper now. Now they don't just test. A pause. They come properly. Silence. Because that meant the game had just started. For real. Kamari closed the file slowly, her hand returning to her stomach. Protective. Grounded. Because now, she wasn't just reacting anymore. She knew what she was standing in, and what was coming. And for the first time, she didn't look afraid. She looked ready. The file didn't feel like paper anymore. It felt heavy. Not in weight, in meaning. Kamari stood still, holding it, her fingers resting on the edge. But her mind was no longer in the room. It was in the past. Because everything she thought she knew had just changed. My father wasn't who I thought he was, she said quietly. Not emotional, not broken. Certain. Kim didn't interrupt. Because this wasn't something he needed to explain anymore. She was seeing it herself. Kamari walked slowly to the chair, sat. The file still open, her eyes moving across the pages again. Names, connections, meetings. Things no ordinary man would be part of. He wasn't just involved, she said. Her voice lower now. He was important. Kim nodded once. Yes. Simple. But it confirmed everything. Kamari exhaled slowly. Ma, then why did he disappear? The question came naturally. Because that part didn't fit. If he was powerful, if he was connected, then why leave nothing behind? Kim stepped closer. Not too close, but enough to ground the moment. He didn't disappear, he said. A pause. He was removed. Silence. Because that word changed everything again. Kamari's grip tightened slightly. By who? She asked. Kim didn't answer immediately. Because that answer was bigger than a name. Then, the same kind of people who are looking for you now. Kamari's chest tightened. Because now, this wasn't just about her. This was unfinished business. Something that started before her and had now reached her. She looked down at the file again. Her father's face. Frozen in time. And suddenly, it didn't feel distant anymore. It felt connected. Directly to her. Then he knew something, she said. Kim nodded. Yes. A pause. And he didn't give it to them? Kamari looked up slowly. Which is why they're looking for it now. Another nod. Yes. Everything aligned. The threats, the watching, the pressure. It wasn't random. It was a search. And she was the only remaining link. Kamari leaned back slightly, her hand moving to her stomach again. Protective. Grounding. Then I'm not just a target, she said. Kim watched her. No. A pause. Your leverage. The word landed heavier than anything else. Because that meant she wasn't just being watched. She was being positioned, used. Kamari's jaw tightened slightly. I won't be used, she said. Not loud, but firm. Kim didn't react. Because that answer didn't surprise him. They don't need your permission, he said. The truth. Cold. Kamari held his gaze. Then I need to understand what they're looking for. Now she was moving differently. Not reacting. Strategizing. Kim stepped closer. And this time, there was no distance in his tone. Your father handled information. Kamari listened carefully. Not money. A pause. Not power. Another. Information. That explained everything. Because information was more valuable than anything else. Then he hid something, she said. Kim nodded. Yes. Kamari's mind moved fast now. Where? The question came immediately. Because that was the key. Kim's gaze stayed on her. That's what they don't know. Silence. Because that was the problem. And the danger. Kamari leaned forward slightly. Then why come after me? Kim didn't hesitate this time. Because you're the only thing he left untouched. The words hit deeper than expected. Because that meant she wasn't forgotten. She was protected. Even back then. Kamari's eyes softened slightly. Just for a moment, then hardened again. Because this wasn't about emotion. This was about survival. They think I know something, she said. Kim nodded. Yes. A pause. And they're willing to push until you remember. Kamari exhaled slowly. I don't remember anything, she said. Truth. Clear. Kim watched her. Then, that won't stop them. Of course it wouldn't. Because this wasn't about truth. It was about pressure. Kamari stood slowly. The file still in her hand. Then, what about you? She asked. Kim didn't move. What about me? He replied. Kamari stepped closer. Her eyes sharp now. You knew about him. A pause. You knew something was coming. Another. So, why are you involved? Silence. Because that question was personal. And strategic. Kim held her gaze. Then, because I was there. The answer came quietly. But it changed everything. Kamari's breath caught. There? Kim nodded once. When it ended, silence. Because now, this wasn't just connection. This was history. Shared history. Kamari's chest tightened. You knew my father. Not a question. A realization. Kim didn't deny it. Yes. The truth. Finally, Kamari's mind shifted again. Because now, this wasn't just coincidence. This was collision. Past meeting present. And now, she said slowly, I'm part of something he started. Kim didn't interrupt. Because that was exactly it. A pause filled the room. Then, Kamari lifted her chin slightly. Her voice steady. Then don't protect me blindly.
The board is waiting. We need to be ready.
Kim watched her.
The projections look good. Let's not
Teach me.
Must be strong. Adjust your hip
Silence.
rotation. Now,
Because that
concentrate power here
was the real
and punch
turning
forward
point.
quickly.
자세를
Not fear.
유지하고 정확하게
Not
앞으로. 자,
dependence.
호흡을 조절하고
Choice.
방아쇠를 천천히 당기세요.
She wasn't asking to
정확히
be
맞출 수
saved
있습니다.
anymore. She was asking to
자,
understand.
호흡을 조절하고
To
방아쇠를
stand,
천천히 당기세요.
to
이렇게
survive
맞출 수
properly.
있습니다. 자, 호흡을 조절하고
Kim studied her
방아쇠를 천천히
longer this
당기세요.
time.
정확히 맞출 수 있습니다.
Then
자, 호흡을
he nodded.
조절하고 방아쇠를
Once.
천천히 당기세요.
Decision made.
정확히 맞출
Then
자세를
you follow
유지하고
everything I say,
정확하게
he said. Not control.
앞으로
Structure.
밀어.
Kamari didn't
자세를
hesitate.
유지하고 정확하게
Then don't hold anything back. The room stilled.
앞으로 밀어.
Because now, this wasn't protection anymore. This was partnership. And everything after this would be different. The room didn't feel the same anymore. Not because anything had changed physically, but because something had shifted between them. Kamari wasn't standing like before. Not guarded, not uncertain, grounded. Her eyes steady, her breathing controlled. Because the moment she said, "Teach me," everything changed. Kim Do-han studied her in silence. Not testing, not doubting, measuring. Because words were easy. But what came after was not. You don't get to hesitate anymore, he said. Calm, but absolute. Kamari didn't look away. I didn't hesitate tonight, she replied. Truth. Kim nodded once. You didn't understand tonight. A pause. That's different. Silence. Because that was true. Kamari accepted it. Not defensive. Focused. Then make me understand, she said. No emotion. Just intention. Kim stepped closer. This time, there was no distance left between them. You're not being protected because you're weak, he said, his voice low. Controlled. You're being protected because you're valuable. Kamari's breath slowed. Because that word carried weight now. And value attracts pressure, he continued. A pause. If you don't know how to handle that. His gaze locked into hers. You break. Silence. Because that wasn't a warning. It was fact. Kamari nodded once. I won't. Not stubborn. Certain. Kim didn't react immediately. Then, we'll see. Not doubt. Process. He stepped back slightly. Creating space again. Come. The word was simple. But this time, it wasn't about following. It was about stepping forward. Kamari moved without hesitation. And the hallway felt differently. Not unfamiliar. Structure. Predictable. She noticed things she hadn't before. Positions, angles, blind spots. Where people stood, why they stood there. Because now, she was looking properly. Not as a guest, but as someone inside. They stopped in a different room. Not large, not decorated, empty. Deliberately, Kamari stepped in slowly, her eyes scanning the space. Why here? She asked. Kim closed the door behind her. Because nothing distracts you here. A pause. And nothing protects you either. That mattered. Because this was not comfort. This was preparation. Kamari stood in the center, waiting. Kim walked around her slowly, not circling, observing. First thing you learn, he said, is awareness. Kamari didn't move, her eyes forward. But her mind, tracking him. You don't react to what you see, he continued. You react to what you feel before it happens. Silence. Because that wasn't obvious. That was instinct. And instinct had to be built. Turn, he said. Kamari turned immediately. Not fast. Controlled. Kim stopped in front of her. You hesitated half a second, he said. Kamari frowned slightly. I turned immediately. Kim shook his head once. You thought first. That was the difference. And it mattered. Kamari exhaled slowly, then nodded. Again, Kim moved. Faster this time. Not loud, not predictable. Turn. Kamari turned. Faster. Better. Kim watched. Then, again, the process repeated. Over and over. Until... She stopped thinking and started responding. Her breathing changed. Her focus sharpened. Her body adjusted. Because this wasn't about strength. It was about control. After a while, Kim stopped. Good. Kamari's chest rose slowly, but her face stayed steady. What else? She asked. Because she wasn't done. Kim stepped closer. You trust what you feel, he said. A pause. Not what you're told? That hit differently. Because everything tonight had proven that. Kamari nodded. I already learned that. Kim held her gaze. Yes? A pause. But now you apply it. Silence. Because this wasn't theory anymore. This was survival. A sudden knock interrupted them. Sharp. Urgent. Kim didn't move immediately. Come in. The door opened. The same older man stepped in. His expression serious. Different from before. They made contact again, he said. The room shifted instantly. Kamari's body tensed slightly. Because now, it wasn't distant anymore. Again. How? Kim asked calmly. The man stepped forward. Not here. A pause. At her old apartment. Silence. Heavy. Because that was personal. Kamari's breath caught. My place? She asked. The man nodded. Yes. A pause. They're searching. Everything froze. Because now, this wasn't just pressure. This was progression. They think it's there, Kamari said slowly. Connecting it. Kim's eyes didn't move. Yes. Of course they did. Because that's where her father had been. Where her life had been. Where something might still be. Kamari's hand moved to her stomach again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was grounding. They won't find anything, she said. Kim looked at her. You're sure? Kamari nodded. Yes? A pause. Then, her eyes sharpened. But I know what they're thinking. Kim didn't interrupt. Because now, she was thinking like them. They think I don't remember, she continued. And that if they search enough, they'll find what I missed. Silence. Because that was exactly it. Kim nodded once. Then we move before they do. Decision. Immediate. Kamari's heart steadied. Because now, she wasn't being pulled into it. She was stepping into it. What do you need me to do? She asked. Kim held her gaze. Then, be ready. That was all. But this time, it meant everything. Because whatever came next, would not happen here. It would happen out there. And Kamari was no longer just being protected. She was part of the move. The car ride felt different. Not quiet, not tense, focused. Kamari sat in the back seat, hands resting on her stomach, eyes forward. But her mind was sharp, because this wasn't escape. This was return. Her old apartment. The place she once called normal. Now, a target. Across from her, Kim Do-han. Still, calm, watching nothing, but aware of everything. Once we step out, he said, you don't improvise. Kamari nodded. I follow. Simple. Clear. Kim studied her for a moment. Then, you observe first? A pause. Move second. Kamari repeated it quietly. Observe, then move. Kim nodded once. The car slowed. Not abruptly. Smooth. Controlled. Kamari's eyes shifted toward the window. Her building. Exactly the same. And completely different. Lights on, a few windows open. Normal. Too normal. Stop here, Kim said. The car halted before reaching the entrance. Not close, not obvious. Strategic. One of the men in front turned slightly. Perimeter already checked, he said. Kim didn't respond immediately, because that wasn't enough. Checked, or cleared? He asked. The man corrected himself quickly. Cleared. Kim nodded once. Stay in position. The doors unlocked. Kamari stepped out. The air hit her differently. Familiar, but heavier. Because now, she knew she was being watched. Even if she couldn't see it. Kim stepped beside her. Not in front, not behind. Beside. Same position as before. But this time, it meant something else. Control of space. They walked toward the entrance. Each step measured. Each movement deliberate. Kamari's eyes scanned everything. Corners, reflections, windows, just like he taught her. Observe first. They reached the door. Unlocked. Kamari paused, her fingers brushing lightly against the handle. This wasn't like this before, she said. Kim didn't touch the door. Of course it wasn't. A pause. They've already been here. Kamari exhaled slowly. Then she opened it. Inside, everything looked untouched. Furniture in place, lights steady. No signs of forced entry, but something felt wrong. Subtle. Unseen. Kamari stepped in slowly. Her steps lighter now. Careful. Because now, she trusted what she felt. Not just what she saw. Kim followed. Silent. Watching. Letting her move first. Because this was her space. Kamari walked toward the center, her eyes scanning the room. Then she stopped. There, she said quietly. Kim's gaze followed. The table. Everything looked normal. But one chair was slightly off. Barely noticeable. But enough. They moved things, she said. Kim nodded once. Yes. Confirmation. Kamari walked closer, her fingers brushing the edge of the table. Then she turned toward the hallway, her heartbeat steady, because something was pulling her. not memory. Instinct. She walked down the hallway, past the bedroom, past the kitchen, then stopped. At the wall. Kim watched her, didn't interrupt. Because now, this wasn't guidance. This was recall. Kamari stared at the wall, confused at first. Then something shifted. A memory. Small, unclear, but present. Her fingers moved slowly, touching a specific spot, then pressing. Nothing. She frowned slightly. No, she whispered. Then she stepped back, looked again. Different angle. Then pressed again. A soft click. Both of them froze. Because that was real. The wall shifted slightly. Barely visible. But enough. Kamari's breath caught. Because now, this wasn't imagination. This was hidden. Kim stepped closer. His eyes sharp now. Focused. Kamari pushed slightly. The panel moved, revealing a small compartment. Inside, a sealed envelope. Old, untouched. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for it. Because this was it? What they were looking for. What her father left. What started everything. Kamari pulled it out slowly. Held it. Stared at it. Then, footsteps. Fast. Outside. Both of them turned instantly. Kim's expression shifted. Sharp. Focused. They're here, he said. Not loud, but final. Kamari's heart slammed once. Because this was no longer search. This was interception. And they had arrived. Right on time, the sound came again. Closer this time. Not careful, not hidden. Fast. Kamari's grip tightened around the envelope. Her heart pounded once. Hard. Because this wasn't anticipation anymore. This was arrival. Kim stepped in front of her instantly, not rushed, but precise, blocking her from the hallway. Behind me, he said. Kamari didn't argue, didn't hesitate. She moved, one step back, then another, positioning herself exactly where he wanted her. Because now, this wasn't the time to think. This was the time to trust. The front door burst open, not violently, but with force. 3 men entered, fast, eyes scanning. Weapons low, but ready. They stopped the moment they saw him, not surprised, but not comfortable either, because this was not what they expected. One of them stepped forward slightly. You move fast, he said. Kim didn't respond, didn't acknowledge the tone, didn't react. Because men like him didn't engage in unnecessary conversation. The man's eyes shifted to Kamari, behind him. That's what we're here for, he added. Kamari felt it immediately. That look. Not curiosity. Not confusion. Recognition. Because now they knew exactly who she was. Kim stepped slightly to the side. Just enough to block their view again. You came into my space, he said calmly. The room stilled. Because that tone wasn't warning. It was acknowledgement. And you walked into mine, the man replied. A small smile. Controlled. Dangerous. Let's not pretend we didn't expect this. Kim's eyes didn't move. Then, you don't belong here. Simple. Clear. The man exhaled softly. We're not here for you. That was the mistake. Because the moment he said that, the room shifted. Completely. Kim took one step forward. Slow. Measured. You're here because of me, he said. No emotion. Just fact. Silence. Because that was the truth. They wouldn't be here if he hadn't stepped in. The man's expression hardened slightly. We're here for what she has. There it was. No more pretending. No more testing. Direct. Kamari's fingers tightened around the envelope. Because now it was confirmed. This was what they wanted. Kim didn't look back. But he knew. Then you're leaving without it, he said. Final. The man shook his head slowly. That's not how this ends. A pause. Then, it can be simple. Kim didn't respond. So he continued. You hand it over. A glance toward Kamari. And we walk away. Silence. Because that option didn't exist. Kamari felt it before he even spoke. No, Kim said. Quiet, but absolute. The air tightened. Because now, there were no more words left. The man sighed slightly. Then we do this the hard way. Wrong choice. Kim moved first. Not fast. Not dramatic. Efficient. Precise. Within seconds, everything changed. The space collapsed. The distance disappeared. One man moved, stopped. Another tried. Too late. Because Kim didn't fight wildly. He controlled. Every movement intentional. Every action calculated. Kamari stood still. Not frozen. Focused. Watching. Learning. Because this was what he meant. Not strength. Control. Within moments, it was over. Not loud. Not chaotic. Done. The men were down. Not unconscious. Not gone. But no longer a threat. Kim stepped back. His breathing unchanged. His expression calm. Like nothing had happened. Kamari's chest rose slowly. Because she had just seen it. Not heard about it. Not imagined it. Seen it. And now? She understood. Why no one crossed him. Kim turned slightly. His eyes moving to her. You're holding it wrong, he said. Kamari blinked. Confused for a second. Then she looked down. The envelope. Her grip too tight. Too exposed. Kim stepped closer. Adjusted her hand slightly. Protect it like it matters, he said. A pause. Not like you're afraid of it. That difference changed everything. Kamari nodded slowly, her grip shifting. Steadier now. Controlled. Then she looked at him. They won't stop, she said. Not fear. Understanding. Kim held her gaze. No. Truth. Unfiltered. Kamari exhaled. Then we don't run. Silence. Because that was the real shift. Kim studied her. Then he nodded. Once. Approval. Good. A pause. Then Now open it. Kamari looked down, the envelope in her hands. Wah, the thing they risked everything for. The thing her father left behind. Her fingers moved slowly, carefully. Then she opened it. Inside, a single piece of paper. Folded. Old. She unfolded it. Her eyes scanned the page, then stopped. Her breath caught, because what she saw was not what she expected. Not names, not money. Coordinates. And one word. Trust no one. The room went silent, because that was not just a message. It was a warning. And now, everything became more dangerous. The words didn't leave her mind. Trust no one, not even for a second. Kamari stood still, the paper slightly trembling in her hand, because those weren't random words. They were intentional. Left for her. By him. Her father. Kim didn't speak immediately. He watched her. Not the paper. Her. Because what mattered now was how she reacted. Kamari looked down again. Coordinates. Clean. Precise. Not written in a hurry. Planned. Hidden. Protected. Her fingers tightened slightly. He knew this would happen, she said quietly. Kim nodded once. Yes. A pause. He didn't leave that for safety. Another pause. He left it for when you were ready. Silence. Because that changed everything. Kamari's chest tightened. Ready for what? She asked. Kim didn't answer immediately. Because that answer wasn't simple. Then, for this. A pause. What's coming next? The air shifted. Because now, they weren't reacting anymore. They were moving forward. Kamari folded the paper slowly, carefully, like it mattered. Because now, it did. She looked at him. We go there. Not a question. A decision. Kim studied her. Then, no. The word landed instantly. Kamari frowned. Why? Kim stepped closer. Because that's what they expect. Of course it was. Kamari exhaled slowly. They want us to follow it. Kim nodded. Yes. A pause. And if we do it wrong? He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Kamari understood. Trap. Setup. Positioning. She looked back at the paper. Then, what if it's not a trap? She asked. Kim held her gaze. Then it's worse. Silence. Because that meant whatever was there was real and important. Kamari's mind moved quickly. If my father left it, a pause. Then it's something they couldn't find. Kim nodded. Yes. Another pause. And now we have it. That changed the game. Completely. Kamari stepped back slightly. Thinking. Processing. Then, her eyes sharpened. They don't just want me. Kim didn't interrupt. They want what I lead them to. The realization landed. Clear. Precise. Kim nodded once. Now you understand. This wasn't about her existence. It was about her direction. Where she would go? What she would uncover. Kamari looked at him again. And you already knew that. Not a question. Kim didn't deny it. Yes, of course he did. Because men like him didn't wait for confirmation. They worked ahead of it. So, Kamari's chest tightened slightly. Because now there was something else. Something uncomfortable. She looked at him carefully. Then why bring me here? She asked. A pause. You could have taken it yourself. Silence. Because that question mattered. Kim stepped closer. You opened it. Kamari frowned. That doesn't answer the question. Kim's gaze didn't move. It does. A pause. He left it for you. Silence. Because that meant it wasn't just information. It was intended. For her. Only her. Kamari's grip tightened slightly again. Because now there was another thought. A dangerous one. What if he didn't mean you? She asked. The room stilled. Because that was the first crack. Not in trust. In certainty. Kim didn't react immediately. But his eyes shifted. Slightly. What do you mean? He asked calmly. Kamari held his gaze. He said, trust no one. A pause. That includes you. Silence. Heavy. Because now, this wasn't just strategy. This was personal. Kim didn't step back. Didn't get defensive. Didn't react emotionally. He simply looked at her. Then, yes. The answer came calmly. Without hesitation. Kamari blinked slightly. Because she expected resistance. Not agreement. That includes me, he repeated. A pause. That's why you think. The room shifted again. Because now, this wasn't about blind trust. It was about awareness. Control. Choice. Kamari exhaled slowly. Because that answer didn't weaken him. It strengthened the situation. Then I'll decide, she said quietly. Kim nodded. Good. A pause. Just don't decide slowly. That mattered. Because hesitation was still dangerous. Kamari folded the paper again. Placed it carefully inside her jacket. Then, what's the next move? She asked. Kim turned slightly, walking toward the door. Not there, he said. A pause. First, we find out who else knows about this. Kamari followed, step by step. Because now, she wasn't being led. She was moving with him. Into something deeper. Something more dangerous. Because now, it wasn't just about survival. It was about information. And in a world like his, information didn't just protect you. It made you a target. A weapon. Or both. The apartment no longer felt like hers. Not after what just happened. Not after what she found. Not after what it meant. Kamari stepped out beside him, the envelope secured, the paper hidden. But the weight of it, still there. Because now, she wasn't just carrying information. She was carrying direction. The car door opened. She stepped in without hesitation. This time, no fear. Just awareness. Kim followed. The door shut. The car moved. Silence filled the space. Not empty. Focused. Kamari looked out the window. The city lights blurred past. Familiar. but no longer safe. "Where are we going?" she asked. Kim didn't answer immediately. Then, to someone who listens before they speak, that wasn't an answer. Not fully. But it was enough. Kamari didn't press further. Because now, she understood something important. He never moved without reason. And whatever came next was already planned. The car stopped. Not at a house. Not at a public place. A building. Tall, quiet, unmarked. Kamari stepped out slowly, her eyes scanning everything. Security, but not obvious. Presence, but controlled. Kim walked ahead. She followed. Inside. The air felt different. Cool. Silent. Structured. They didn't speak at the entrance. Didn't stop. Didn't check in. Because they didn't need to. Doors opened. People moved aside. Respect, immediate. They entered a room. Large. Minimal. Screens along the walls. Information moving. Quietly. A man stood in the center. Older. Sharp eyes. Still. He didn't greet immediately. Didn't smile. Just observed. Kamari felt it instantly. This man was different. Not loud. Not powerful in the obvious way. But aware. Very aware. "Kim," he said finally. Calm. Measured. Kim gave a slight nod. Nothing more. No introductions. No explanations. Because between men like them, those things weren't necessary. The man's gaze shifted. To Kamari. Not long, but enough. "So this is her," he said. Not a question. A confirmation. Kamari didn't react. Didn't look away. Because now she understood how to stand. "Yes," Kim replied. Simple. The man nodded slightly. Then, you've made things complicated." Kamari felt that, but Kim didn't respond. Because that statement wasn't for debate, it was fact. The man stepped closer, his attention sharper now. They moved sooner than expected. Kim nodded. Yes. A pause. They always do when they're desperate. Kamari's chest tightened slightly. Because that word, desperate, meant something. "They're not searching anymore," the man continued. "They're closing in." Silence. Because now it was confirmed. This wasn't about finding, it was about taking. Kamari's fingers tightened slightly at her side. "Who?" she asked. The man looked at her. Directly. No hesitation. "The same people your father refused." Silence. Because now, this wasn't abstract. This was personal. Kamari stepped slightly forward. "What did he refuse?" she asked. The man didn't answer immediately. Then, control. The word landed heavy. Because that meant this wasn't just information. This was power. Real power. The kind people fought over. The kind people killed for. Kamari's breath slowed. "And now they think I have it," she said. The man nodded. "Yes." A pause. "And if they confirm that?" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Kamari understood. She wouldn't just be a target. She would be the objective. Kim stepped slightly forward. What do we know? He asked. The man turned. One of the screens lit up. Locations, movements, connections. They've split, the man said. Multiple teams. A pause. One of them is already tracking movement from your apartment. Kamari's chest tightened. They're following us, she said. Not fear. Understanding. The man looked at her. Yes. Simple. Clear. Because there was no point hiding it. Kim's expression didn't change. Let them, he said. The room stilled. Because that was not defensive. That was control. Kamari looked at him. You want them to follow us? She asked. Kim turned slightly. Yes. A pause. They'll lead us back to whoever sent them. Silence. Because now, this wasn't about being chased. This was about reversing it. Kamari's mind shifted. Because now, she saw it. This wasn't survival anymore. This was strategy. And the coordinates? She asked. The man in the room looked at her. Those matter, he said. A pause. But not yet. Kamari nodded slowly. Because she understood. One move at a time. Wrong timing. Everything falls apart. She looked at Kim. Then, what do you need me to do? The question came naturally now. Not hesitant. Not unsure. Part of the process. Kim held her gaze. Then, stay exactly where they can see you. The words landed sharp. Because that meant she was part of the plan. Directly. Kamari's breath slowed. Because this was the first real decision. Not survival. Participation. They'll come closer, she said. Kim nodded. Yes. A pause. And when they do... His eyes sharpened slightly. We end it properly. Silence. Because now there was no middle ground. No delay. No second chance. Kamari nodded slowly. Decision made. Because now she understood something clearly. She wasn't being pulled into this anymore. She had stepped into it. And whatever came next, she would face it. Not behind him. Beside him. The plan didn't feel like a plan. Because nothing about it was spoken loudly. Nothing was repeated. Nothing was explained twice. But Kamari understood it. Completely. She stood exactly where she was told. Near the glass wall. Visible. Not exposed. Positioned. Her reflection stared back at her. But this time, she didn't look like the same woman from the ballroom. She looked steady. Because now, she knew what was happening. And more importantly, why. Across the room, Kim Do-han stood still. Not watching her. Watching everything else. Because in moments like this, the threat never came from where you expected. The man from earlier moved quietly between screens, tracking movement, adjusting positions. They're closing, he said calmly. No panic, no urgency. Just information. Kamari didn't turn, didn't shift, because she knew that was part of it. Observe, don't react. They split again, the man continued. 2 teams, no, 3. A pause. One is moving fast. Kim's eyes shifted slightly. That's the one. He didn't need more. Because speed meant priority. And priority meant importance. Kamari's fingers tightened slightly at her side. But her face remained calm. Because now, control mattered more than anything else. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time felt different now. Slower, heavier. Then the door opened. Not rushed, not forced, deliberate, and the room changed instantly. Not because of the movement, but because of who walked in. One man. Alone. No rush, no hesitation. Dressed clean, sharp, calm, too calm. Kamari felt it immediately. This one was different, not like the others, not like the ones at her apartment. This man didn't scan the room, didn't react, didn't adjust. He walked in like he already owned the outcome. Kim didn't move, didn't speak, didn't acknowledge immediately. Because this was not a situation to rush. The man stopped a few steps away. His eyes moved once, across the room, then landed on Kamari, and stayed there. Not long, but long enough. Then he smiled slightly. That took less time than I expected. His voice was calm, measured, but carried something else. Confidence. Not fake. Real. Kamari didn't react. Didn't step back. Didn't look away. Because now she understood. This was the one. The one behind it. Kim stepped forward slightly. Just enough. You came personally, he said. The man's smile didn't fade. Of course. A pause. You don't send messages to someone like you. Respect. But not submission. That difference mattered. The man looked at Kamari again. Then, and I wanted to see her. Silence. Because now, everything was clear. This wasn't about guessing anymore. This was direct. Kim's gaze sharpened slightly. You've seen enough. The man tilted his head slightly. I don't think so. A pause. I think she's more important than you realized. Kamari's chest tightened slightly. But she didn't move. Didn't react. Because this was her moment. The man stepped closer. Not toward Kim. Toward her. Slow. Measured. Controlled. Kim moved instantly. Blocking the space. Not aggressively. But absolutely. You don't step past me, he said. The man stopped. Then smiled again. That depends. A pause. On whether she steps past you first. Silence. Because that was the play. Not force. Choice. Kamari felt it. Clearly, he wasn't here to take it. Not yet. He was here to shift her. Make her question. Make her choose. Kamari, the man said calmly. Her name. Clean. Confident. Like he had always known it. You don't have to stand there. Kamari's heart beat once. Hard. But her face stayed still. You don't have to be part of his world. A pause. You don't even know what he is. Silence. Because now, this wasn't about power. This was psychological. The man stepped slightly to the side, not crossing Kim, but opening space. You think he's protecting you? A small smile. He's using you. Kamari's fingers tightened slightly. Because those words were designed. Carefully. Precisely. You're not here by accident, he continued. You're here because you matter. A pause. And if you matter to him? His eyes sharpened slightly. You're already part of something you can't control. Silence. Because that was partially true. And that's what made it dangerous. Kamari finally spoke, her voice calm. Steady. I already know that. The man paused. Just slightly. Because that wasn't the reaction he expected. Kamari stepped forward. Not past Kim. Beside him. Same position. Intentional. I also know what you're trying to do, she added. Silence. Because now, the balance shifted. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. Do you? He asked. Kamari held his gaze. You're not here for the envelope. A pause. You're here for me. Another pause. To see if I'd break. Silence. Because that was the truth. The man smiled again. But this time, it was different. Sharper. Then tell me, he said. Did you? Kamari didn't hesitate. No. The word landed clean. Clear. Final. The room shifted. Because now, the test was complete. The man looked at Kim, then back at her. And for the first time, there was something new in his expression. Interest. Real interest. Good, he said quietly. A pause. Then this will be more interesting than I thought. Silence. Because that was not a threat. It was a promise. And promises like that didn't end easily. The room didn't move. But everything inside it changed. Not physically. Mentally. Because now, this wasn't about presence. It was about control. The man didn't step closer, didn't retreat. He simply stood there, watching Kamari. Not like an enemy, like someone studying something valuable. You remind me of him, he said calmly. Kamari didn't respond immediately, because that sentence carried weight. Of who? She asked, even though she already knew. The man smiled slightly. Your father. Silence. Because now, this wasn't just conflict. This was connection. Kamari's chest tightened, but her face stayed still. You knew him, she said. Not a question. The man nodded slowly. Better than most. Kim didn't move, but his presence shifted slightly. Because now, this was no longer just Kamari's moment. This was history. And history changed outcomes. He was smart, the man continued. A pause. Too smart. Kamari's fingers curled slightly. Then why isn't he here? She asked. Direct. Sharp. The man's smile faded slightly. Not completely, but enough. Because he made a mistake, he said. Silence. Because that word didn't fit easily. Refusing you? Kamari asked. The man looked at her. And for the first time, There was honesty. Yes, the truth. Clear. Kamari's heart beat once. Hard. Because now, everything connected. He chose not to give you what you wanted, she said. The man nodded. And he chose to hide it. A pause. Which forced us to adapt. That word meant something else. Kamari's voice lowered slightly. You killed him? Silence. The room held its breath. Because that was the line. The man didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it directly. But his silence was enough. Kamari's jaw tightened. Because now, this wasn't just about survival. This was personal. Very personal. Kim stepped slightly forward. But Kamari didn't move. Because this, she needed to face herself. You're not like him, the man said. Kamari's eyes snapped back to him. What does that mean? She asked. The man tilted his head slightly. He hesitated. A pause. You don't. Silence. Because that was both a compliment and a warning. Kamari held his gaze. You don't know me, she said. The man smiled faintly. I know enough. A pause. You didn't run. Another. You didn't break. And then you opened the envelope. Kamari's breath slowed. Because he knew. Everything. How? She asked. The man's expression didn't change. You think you're the only one watching? He replied. Silence. Because that was the truth of this world. Nothing happened unseen. Nothing stayed hidden forever. Kamari stepped slightly forward. Not aggressive. Intentional. What do you want? She asked. The man looked at her. Directly. Finally. You. The word landed clean. No decoration. No confusion. Kamari didn't react. Didn't flinch. Because she expected it. For what? She asked. The man's eyes sharpened slightly. To finish what he started. Silence. Because that was bigger than anything else. Kamari's chest tightened. My father didn't work for you, she said. The man smiled again. No. A pause. He worked against us. That changed everything. Because now, this wasn't just unfinished work. This was opposition. Conflict. War. Kamari's voice steadied. And you think I'll help you? The man didn't hesitate. No. A pause. I think you'll understand. Silence. Because that was more dangerous than force. Understanding led to choices. And choices changed sides. Kamari shook her head slightly. I already understand enough, she said. The man watched her carefully. Do you? He asked. A pause. Then ask him. Kamari's eyes shifted. To Kim. The room tightened. Because now, the pressure moved. From enemy to ally. Ask him what your father really was, the man said calmly. Silence. Because that was the real attack. Not physical. Psychological. Doubt. Kamari's chest tightened slightly. But she didn't turn. Didn't look at Kim. Because that was the test. Trust. or question. Her fingers pressed lightly against her stomach, grounding. Then she spoke. "I already know what matters," she said. The man watched her closely. "And what's that?" he asked. Kamari's eyes didn't leave his. "That you're the one who came after him." A pause. "And now you're here for me." Silence. Because that answer didn't give him what he wanted. No doubt. No shift. No crack. The man exhaled slowly. Then he smiled again. But this time, it was different. Less controlled. More impressed. "Then we're not done," he said. A pause. Not even close. Because now he understood something clearly. Kamari wasn't weak. And that made her more dangerous. The room didn't feel balanced anymore. Not after what he said. Not after what he implied. Because now, the tension wasn't just between enemies. It was between truth and trust. Kamari didn't move. But something inside her had shifted. Not doubt. Not fully. But awareness. Because the question had been planted. And questions didn't disappear. They stayed. The man watched her closely, waiting, not for fear, for hesitation. But it didn't come. Instead, Kamari turned, slowly, and looked at Kim Duhan. For the first time since this started, directly. Fully. Not as protector. Not as leader. As someone with answers. "Tell me," she said, her voice calm, but firm, because this couldn't be ignored. The room stilled, because now everything depended on this moment. Kim didn't respond immediately. He didn't look away, didn't avoid it. He simply held her gaze. Then, "He was not what you think," he said. Simple. Clear. Kamari's chest tightened slightly. "I already know that," she replied. A pause. "I want to know what he was." Silence. Because now there was no space left for partial truth. Kim stepped forward slightly. His voice lower, more direct. "Your father built systems," he said. Kamari listened. "Not businesses." A pause. "Not empires." Another. "Systems." That word again. It felt heavier now. "What kind of systems?" Kamari asked. Kim didn't hesitate. "The kind that control outcomes." Silence. Because that was power. Real power. Not money. Not influence. Control. Kamari's fingers curled slightly. "He didn't just gather information," she said slowly. "He used it." Kim nodded once. "Yes." A pause. "He predicted movement." Another. "Decisions." And then, people. Kamari's breath caught slightly. Because now, this wasn't just intelligence. This was strategy. High level. Dangerous. "He built something they couldn't control," Kim continued. "And when they couldn't control it?" A pause. "They tried to take it." Kamari's voice dropped. "And he refused." Kim held her gaze. Yes. That part was clear now. But something still didn't fit. Where were you? Kamari asked. The question came sharp. Direct. Because this was personal. Kim didn't look away. I was there. A pause. Not with him. Another. Against what was coming for him. Silence. Because that was different. Not ally. Not enemy. Something in between. Ah! Kamari's eyes narrowed slightly. You didn't save him? The words came quietly. But they carried weight. The room tightened. Because that was the truth being tested? And just like that, the question was no longer about the enemy. It was about him. Because when truth and trust collide, only one survives. And Kamari had just stepped into a world where every answer comes with a cost. Because the deeper she goes, the more dangerous it becomes. Not just for her, but for everyone around her. So now the real question is, was the enemy telling the truth? Or was this all part of a bigger game? Because one thing is certain. The next move will change everything. Did you trust Kim Do-han? Or did you start questioning him too? Let me know in the comments. And if you're not ready to miss what happens next, subscribe now. Because part 4? That's where the truth starts breaking people.